In studio, we're joined by Jeremy Loops. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Your current album, Trading Change, is actually #1 at the moment on iTunes SA charts. I mean, how was the whole experience of working on that album?
It was exciting and frustrating, and it took a long time. Yeah, it was cool. We did it in the UK in October last year, finally, and I spent the last 2.5 years planning it and working on the material for it. So having it finally ready and off my hands is an amazing feeling. And it launched this morning, and it's doing really, really well so far. It's right up there, #1. Beating Now 66, which has been owning the charts for the last few weeks. I thought I was never going to top them.
And I mean, did you ever feel under pressure having sold the album, like pre-sold the album on iTunes before you were actually in studio producing the album?
Yeah, I did. I felt, well, I mean, a lot of people backed me as a musician long before I committed to actually deadlines of when the album would be out. I just said, I want to make an album, I need money to do it, I need money to get myself over to the States and to these showcases so that the right people can see what I'm doing. And I asked my community to support that, and they did. I raised, I think it was $11,000 worth of basically, essentially album sales, people who pre-order the album, just with the knowledge that at a future date they will receive it. So last week, before anyone else got iTunes available links or anything, all the backers got their downloaded album, which was, I think, for for them really nice to have been involved in something from a year and a half ago already, or a year ago, and for me to finally be able to deliver something that I'm really proud of and say, here's that money you gave me, there's your album.
And I mean, the reason for taking so long to actually get it out, what was the reason for that?
I think I just didn't feel like I was ready yet. I've seen a lot of really great bands put out some really great records, and a lot of really great bands put out some records that don't do their sound justice at all. And I have a particularly complicated situation because I'm like a live loop artist and my show is quite theatrical, I suppose. So I was worried about how to transfer my live looping into an album, songs that actually will spread virally just because people like the songs, not songs that take a minute to get looped up the way I do them on stage, where I'm adding all the different layers and textures. So I had to overcome that kind of boundary, the difference between my live stage thing and what's going to transfer and still sound and have that live feeling. And I think we did that. I met the right producer who I worked with in the UK.
And who did you work with?
His name was Brian Wilson. He's an amazing young Canadian guy. He's worked with some really big names in the industry. But I think more than anything, he was just a good sounding board for me to kind of express my frustration at not knowing how to transfer things. And one of the things that he kind of recommended, which I think was very liberating for me, was when he, we all just decided to forget about what you do live and just focus on making these songs in isolation as best as you can, and then we'll back roll it and you can figure out how you want to present it live. And once I've let that go, I just started writing the songs much more for the song, for the album. So that was the focus. And I also saw an interview with, I don't know if you know, the Mumford & Sons.
Yeah,
there's
definitely.
Marcus Mumford, the band, the main guy from the band. I saw an interview with him where he spoke about how they released 5 EPs before they released their debut album. I released 2 EPs. A lot of bands release 1. Some bands don't even release EPs. They go straight into recording an album. But you only really have one chance to make your statement, This is my album. And it's not to say you might not get critical acclaim from your 2nd, 3rd or 4th album. Some artists only make it big on their 5th album. But the most likely scenario is that you either do really well from your first album or not well enough, and it kind of fizzles out.
And I mean, you have made that statement. I mean, your album is
released
and it's right at the top.
Yeah, I feel like I've made the statement so far, and I'm hoping that continues. But I really wanted to get it right. I didn't want to regret it. So I think my fear of regretting putting out something that wasn't as good as I could have made it kept me from it. Just I had all these songs, and some of them I worked on many times over before finally settling on what was the final product.
Yeah. And you'll be touring Canada and the US very soon. So what are you expecting from that tour, and who are you expecting to work with? Do you have any international artists that you're hoping to collaborate with in the future?
Definitely. I don't know who exactly. I was offered a tour with a guy called Xavier Rudd, who I'm a massive fan of, in June, but it doesn't look like we're going to go for that because it didn't really make sense from a timing point of view. But this trip to Canada is, yeah, it's it's for the Canadian Music Week, which is a really big music conference with a lot of the big players globally who come to watch all these up-and-coming bands who are showcasing. And there's some specific people we're kind of hoping to attract attention from, and the idea is that you lock yourself down some people in the right areas who believe in you. You know, you can't actually, it's difficult to export what you do if you're just going and trying to set up your own little shows in these places. You need people, the right people in the right territories to kind of see what you do and go, we want that happening here as often as we can every year. And so the idea of this trip is to go off and convince some of the right Canadian people that I need to be there. And then on the way back, I'm stopping past New York to go and meet the record label that I'm going to be working with in New York.
Which is, give us more info.
They're called Yebo Music, which is kind of cool. It's an ex-South African guy, guy called Colin Finkelstein, and he is the ex-CFO of EMI. He was the CFO of EMI for 25 years, so he's a big
That's
dog.
actually very big. Wow.
No, he's legit. He's probably one of the biggest names in the business over there. And he saw the show in New York last year when I did one small show there, and thankfully he really liked it, and he and I have been kind of back and forth, and it's all happening. So one of his guys is flying down for the Kirstenbosch show tomorrow, the A&R guy Ben, who's a really nice
people who
dude.
don't have their tickets, your message to them? You can
Which
look at that camera.
Get your
and
tickets.
just, yeah,
No, we are at, I think we're at about 80% capacity already, so and this is the week where everything's going to sell out quick. So I think we will be selling out, so yeah, get your tickets if you don't have them.